At my sister's party, she called me useless. They all laughed until her boss walked in, looked at me, and said, "Hi boss. My name is Noelle Hart. I'm the second daughter. The quiet one. The one who learned early how to vanish in a room full of noise." When my sister Ava turned 30, my parents threw her a birthday party that looked like a brand-sponsored lifestyle event. There were neon signs, champagne towers, a photo booth, even a string quartet playing instrumental Taylor Swift under fairy lights. The whole thing looked like Pinterest exploded. I showed up early like always with a thoughtful gift, and zero expectations. They sat me next to the cooler, right by the recycling bin. No name card, no welcome hug, just a passing glance from my mother and a distracted "Oh, you made it" from my dad. Typical. I didn't complain. I just smiled like I always do, tight-lipped and small, because being forgotten hurts less when you pretend you prefer it that way. Then Ava stood up, gold sash across her chest, glass in hand, ring light catching every angle of her perfectly curated smile. She clinked her flute against a fork and toasted herself, like a queen. Then, right before she sat down, she added, "And let's not forget my baby sister Noelle, our family's very own folding chair technician." The crowd laughed. Even my father. Even the damn violinist chuckled. I didn't. I just sat there, smiling the way you do when your dignity is bleeding behind your teeth. They thought it was a joke, a harmless little jab. They didn't know that every so-called joke like that was a stitch in a quilt they'd been wrapping me in for years. One that spelled out, "You are small. You are background. You are forgettable." Let me ask you something. What happens when the woman they've all dismissed turns out to be the one they've unknowingly built their lives around? What happens when the useless sister turns out to be the boss behind their paychecks? Let me show you. The condensation from the cooler had already soaked through the thin plastic tablecloth and was slowly dripping onto my sleeve. No one noticed. No one offered me a napkin. I sat there like an unpaid extra at a party I technically helped fund. Across the lawn, Ava floated from guest to guest like she was dripping in stardust. Hair curled, nails manicured, laugh perfectly pitched at just the right volume. The kind of woman people call a rising star even when they haven't earned it. Because she looks the part, Ava works in digital marketing, junior brand strategist, at a mid-sized firm downtown. She once told our parents she'd built a 6-figure campaign from scratch. She didn't. I know because the pitch was recycled from an intern template. And I know that because the campaign came across my desk. You see, they think I do admin work, answer phones, organize file cabinets. The truth, I own the parent company that owns Ava's agency. 7 years ago, I started with nothing but a silent co-founder agreement and an appetite for leverage. I acquired, absorbed, invested, logistics, real estate, marketing, tech, quietly, strategically. Ava never connected the dots. Neither did my parents. Because when you play the part of the invisible sister long enough, people stop looking for your edges. They didn't see me because they never tried to. There was a photo wall set up near the cake table. A string of fairy lights framed 30 golden clothespins. Each pin held a memory. Ava in a tutu, Ava graduating magna cum laude, Ava at her engagement party, Ava holding a glass trophy at her company's holiday gala. There wasn't a single photo of me. Not one. It was like I was born just to be her shadow. I remember being 12 when Ava had her ballet recital on the same day as my birthday. My mother combined the celebrations. Ava got flowers. I got a book with the clearance sticker still on it. That night, I sat in a secondhand dress, one size too big, watching everyone clap for her as if I didn't exist. When it came time for family photos, I stood next to her, smiling hopefully. My mom frowned and told me to step aside so the lighting would be better. That's how it always was. Ava got center stage. I got the flashlight to make sure she didn't trip. A woman in a designer jumpsuit paused beside me at the cooler. "Are you Ava's assistant, or?" she asked, I scanning my plain navy dress. I didn't correct her. I just nodded and took a sip of my water, because what's the point? It wasn't the first time. Wouldn't be the last. The truth is, I'd been underestimated so many times. It became my best investment strategy. Let them think I'm nothing. Let them ignore me, because the day they finally look up, I'll already own the ground they're standing on. Across the yard, Ava was laughing again, retelling a story about some brand pitch she personally sold to a major beverage client. The story wasn't true, but the crowd nodded anyway. My father grinned like it was gospel. They had no idea that pitch was mine. No. idea I was the one who had flagged her campaign for ethical sourcing issues. No idea the project was pulled because I declined it personally. But that was okay, because tonight, the show was about to end, and the lights were about to shift. The first clue that the wind was shifting came quietly. A murmur, a glance, a brief pause in someone's sentence. It was subtle, but I'd been living on the edge of invisibility long enough to recognize the moment people start wondering if they've misread the room. Ava was mid-sentence, retelling a glorified version of a client call she didn't even lead. When the front gate creaked open, a sleek black car pulled into the driveway. Not flashy, just expensive in that quiet, dangerous kind of way. Ava's back straightened when she saw it. Her glass tilted just slightly in her hand. Is that? Someone whispered beside her. She knew the car. She recognized the man who stepped out. In a tailored navy suit, Zane Caldwell, Chief Executive Officer, founder, powerhouse, and her boss's boss's boss. Ava's eyes widened. Oh my God, she whispered, smoothing her hair and tugging down her dress. That's the CEO. What is he doing here? I didn't move. I didn't need to. Zane walked through the yard with quiet precision, past the champagne tower, past the personalized welcome sign, past Ava who literally stepped in front of him. Glass raised, he didn't even slow down. He walked directly toward me, stopped 2 feet away, removed his sunglasses and said, Miss Hart, I wasn't expecting to see you here. Not Noelle. Not, hi there. Not nice party. Miss Hart, and just like that, the air changed. Behind me, I felt Ava freeze. The hairdryer hum of idle conversations faltered, plastic champagne flutes stopped mid-air. I looked up at Zane and gave a calm, unreadable smile. Nor I, Mr. Caldwell, I replied evenly. But here we are. He tilted his head slightly and lowered his voice. I'll need your read on the Redwood proposal. Things are moving faster than expected. I'll brief you Monday morning, I said. He gave a short nod. Always a pleasure, ma'am. And just like that, he turned and walked away. No hugs, no selfies, no acknowledgement of the birthday girl, just me. And a single title, ma'am. I stood up slowly, brushing off invisible lint from my navy dress. I didn't look at Ava. I didn't need to. Her silence said everything. But my father couldn't help himself. He intercepted me near the dessert table, burger in one hand, cheap beer in the other. Well, look who still plays secretary, he said, eyeing my flats like they confirmed some invisible failure. Ava says, you're, what was it? Comfortable in your little niche. I tilted my head and let the words pass without flinching. Then he added something worse. You know, your LLC came in handy last year, helped your cousin Landon get a women-owned business grant. Looked good on the forms. I blinked. You used my company name. He waved it off, like lint on his shirt. Relax, it's family. You weren't using it. That's when I understood it. Wasn't just about being overlooked, it was about being used, silently, constantly, carelessly, and then being laughed at for it. I leaned in, voice low and sharp. You didn't just use my business. You used my name. He raised an eyebrow. You always were too sensitive. That's why people overlook you. I let the silence stretch. Let him think he'd won. Then I said calmly, no, I don't get overlooked. You just chose not to see me. And I walked away. Back near the fountain, Ava was retelling her story again louder now, as if volume could drown out the unraveling. They said I think like a CEO. She laughed, raising her glass, that I see the big picture. I paused, watching her. The campaign she bragged about had been recycled from a foreign proposal. I'd flagged it for duplication risk and unethical sourcing. She had scrubbed the label, renamed the file, and passed it off as hers, and tonight, she was still building her image on stolen bricks. Not anymore. Zane appeared beside me again. Do you want to do it now? He asked quietly. I didn't look at him. I just said, not yet. 1 more minute. I walked to the long serving table, past the shrimp cocktail and the layered cake, and placed a thick manila envelope on the white tablecloth. Ava's eyes locked on it instantly. Her smile flickered. What's that? She asked, voice still bright, still clinging to performance. I didn't raise my voice. Proof, I said. She stepped forward. I don't know what you think. You know exactly what I think, I said, my tone calm. And you know what's in there? Her hand twitched. You think this makes you better than me? She snapped. No, I said softly. It makes me honest. She laughed sharply. You're just jealous. And then finally I smiled. The kind of smile that means war is over. Then why are you the one trembling? She stepped forward like she might lunge, might scream, but she didn't. Because the room had changed. The air had changed. People were watching now, but not with admiration for her. They were watching me, and they were rethinking everything. Zane cleared his throat. His voice was perfectly audible. Thank you for signing off on the department transfer, Ms. Hart. It's official. Ava's head whipped around. Transfer. I nodded once. You'll be moving to the Tempe office. Smaller team. Less spotlight. A good place to reflect. Gasps. Shifts in posture. Someone dropped their dessert spoon. My mother sat down hard, on the nearest chair. My cousin, probably already Googling my LinkedIn title, stared at me like she'd never seen me before. Because she hadn't. Because none of them had. The silence that followed was unbearable. My sister's boss, my employee, looked from Ava to me with dawning recognition. Wait, this is your sister? She asked. Ava blinked fast. You know each other. Her voice had shrunk to a whisper. Janet smiled tightly. Oh yes. We've worked together for nearly 4 years. She paused, looked at me for permission, and I gave a slight nod. She owns the company. The room collectively gasped. A fork clattered to the floor. No, Ava whispered, shaking her head as if she could undo it. No, that's not true. You said you worked in admin. I do, I said calmly. I handle a lot of paperwork. But I also founded the company. I built it from the ground up. While you were busy hosting wine nights and talking about vision boards, I was coding through the night and pulling 12-hour shifts at a diner to fund my startup. You never said anything, Ava stammered. I looked at her, all the memories of her smirks and jabs surfacing. Would it have mattered? That shut her up. Janet stepped forward, her professionalism returning. Ava, I think it's best we have a meeting on Monday. There are some things we need to discuss, regarding the way you treat others both inside and outside the workplace. Ava's face drained of color. Her wine glass trembled in her hand. Wait, no, please don't, but Janet had already turned back to me. Thank you again for coming tonight, Madison. It's been enlightening. And with that, she left. I stood in the middle of the room, finally owning the space they'd always tried to push me out of. Everyone was staring at me now, not in judgment but in something new. Respect, wonder, maybe even fear. I scanned the crowd. My parents wouldn't meet my eyes. Uncle Rick was suddenly fascinated by the appetizer platter. Aunt Lucy took a long sip of her cocktail, and Ava looked like she'd been gutted. I didn't stay long after that. I walked to the door, head held high, coat over my arm. As I opened it, I turned slightly, just enough to say, you know, sometimes the useless ones are just the ones you couldn't see. Then I left. I drove home with the windows down. The night air was cool and smelled like jasmine. I didn't cry. Not because I wasn't hurt, but because I was finally free of their opinions, their hierarchy, their twisted ladder of worth. I had climbed my own, and I didn't need their applause to keep going. The next morning, I woke up to my inbox, full LinkedIn messages, emails, a dozen missed calls. Ava had texted some long apology about being drunk, not knowing, not meaning it. But she had meant it. She always had. The only difference now was that the truth had finally walked in wearing heels and a blazer, and looked her dead in the eye. 2 weeks later, Janet submitted a formal complaint. HR got involved. Ava didn't get fired, but she got transferred, a demotion, technically, and a warning. My mother emailed me a photo of my old bedroom, now cleared out, and wrote, "You've always surprised me. I hope we didn't fail you." I didn't reply, because they had, but I wasn't failing me anymore. I started going out more. Networking events, mentorship, meets for young women in tech. I gave a talk at NYU. I even hired a team to revamp the company's diversity and inclusion policy. And then one afternoon, a young intern came into my office. She hesitated in the doorway, then said softly, "Miss James, is it true what people are saying? That your family used to call you useless?" I smiled. "Yes, it's true." She swallowed. "And now you run all this?" I nodded. "I do," she beamed. "That's really inspiring." As she turned to leave, I added, "Don't let anyone write your story before you do. Because the truth is, sometimes the best revenge is not shouting louder. It's building higher."